Hello, everybody. This is Brother Chooch for Thinking Out Loud about the End Times. It's good to be back. This is simply, I guess, a Thinking Out Loud episode based on the time that we're in. I just wanted to spend a little time sharing with you my thoughts because there's a lot of significance, I believe, in the time that is now. And so as we watch, and obviously we're going to see what happens, as we watch, I think that we have to have the right mindset of what actually the significance of this time is. So let me run this down because I know that there's been quite a few videos over the past month or so that has touched on this time right now. So, the 9th of Av, Tish B'Av, I believe, will begin in Israel at sundown this evening. Because Israel's about 7 or so hours ahead of us, and as of the recording of this video, that's going to happen fairly soon. So let's just say for the next 24 to 36 hours, just to play it safe, we could probably say the 9th of Av is taking place in Israeli time. So we know that the 9th of Av is very significant just based on events that have occurred in Israel's past. We also are in that time of Pentecost. If you're using Dr. Barry Aw's reasoning of counting the days and what he's introduced in the past year or so, I know that people don't agree with that way of getting to the time of Pentecost, but if you do believe that there's some merit in what he taught about the timing of Pentecost and the difference between Shavuot and Pentecost, well, this would be the time. This is the area of time when Dr. Barry Aw's timing of Pentecost would be. This is also the time of the end of the wheat harvest in Israel, which is highly significant. And I've talked about that with the fruit map and how the wheat represents the church. And wouldn't it be a beautiful picture that at the end of the wheat harvest, that Jesus comes back to take his harvest of wheat, the church, and that he is careful to make sure it is at the end of the wheat harvest because that's when the harvest is both ripe, and I think that he wants to collect the whole field, the whole harvest of wheat. We also heard a lot of talk about how new wine associates with the possible timing of the Lord's return for the church when the end of the wheat harvest ends and the start of new wine, which is now. This is the timing, folks, of the start or being in the season of new wine. The account in Acts chapter 2 with Pentecost has to do with new wine. We also see that there's been a good amount of videos that have presented a good argument of the significance of new wine and the timing and how it may connect to the very rapture of the church. Okay, so you see the wheat is now meeting the new wine, and the time for that is now, so there's a lot of significance there. Then we think of the Revelation 12 sign, which has captivated many people, at least in the past, when it occurred in 2017. Now, if you're like me and believe that the Revelation 12 sign has prophetic significance, why did God choose to put it during the time of the Feast of Trumpets back in 2017? What was the purpose in him doing that, if indeed it was a sign from God? Now, because the number 7 is so significant prophetically speaking, I would have to say that we have to lend some attention that we're 7 years from the Revelation 12 sign. And God could quite possibly be using that sign, pointing to this period of time that we're in right now. Perhaps the time from the 9th of Av to the Feast of Trumpets. I'm not sure. But we are at that place where if you were to take the days of, let's say, the tribulation period, which is, we'll simply take it as 1,260 plus 1,260. If my math is correct, that's 2,520, the length of time of the tribulation period. Well, we're getting to that place, I believe, perhaps on the 17th. My numbers may be a little off, but we're definitely in that time of those days after the Revelation 12 sign. So that makes this week very significant in regards to the Revelation 12 sign. Also, I believe that even 9/23/24 would be significant, considering it was 9/23/2017 when we had the Revelation 12 sign. And to my understanding, the UN will be meeting on 9/23/2024 to discuss and perhaps even put into place their plan, their agenda for the future, whatever that might be. We're also 7 years from the Great American Solar Eclipse, which took place in August of 2017. And not only was it 7 years ago, but we had the second passing of the Great American Solar Eclipse happen this past April. Was that pointing to something? Was that a 7-year warning for America? Was that a 7-year warning to the Gentile nations or to the world in general? Well, I just find it interesting that if there is prophetic significance in the Great American Solar Eclipse, that you do see that 7-year difference from the first passing to the second passing, which made that X over Little Egypt area in America, and also the passing through some significant cities such as Salem's and Nineveh's. Hard for me in my puny mind and thinking to rationalize that didn't have prophetic significance, especially in light of all the other things that are going on right now in the world, and that has been going on in the world the past several years. The other thing that piques my interest is that taking that time range of if the Lord was crucified in 31 AD, and there are quite a few people who believe that's the case, if the Lord was crucified in 31 AD, then the year 2024 becomes very significant, because if you add 2,000 years to 31 AD, the crucifixion date, the possible crucifixion date, you get to 2031 AD, minus 7 years for a tribulation period, and you find yourself in 2024. Well, guess what, folks? 2024 is well over halfway over, and we're entering into a significant bang zone, if you will, where a lot of things seem to be lining up right now. So if the Lord was crucified in 31 AD, it really puts an exclamation point on 2024 as a time to watch closely. And even though you have all these things going on that I just mentioned, Israel, with the tension between Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah, we have to keep our eyes peeled on the Middle East. It truly is a powder keg ready to explode. The wick has been lit, and it is quite possible either Iran or Israel or Hezbollah could perform a preemptive strike, which of course would be followed up by a retaliation. And that Middle East that's already a hotbed of controversy and volatility becomes now just even a greater mess. And he has the potential to trigger off things such as Isaiah 17, where Damascus becomes ruinous heap. Has the potential to trigger Jeremiah 49, which would be an attack, possibly if interpreted correctly, an attack on Iran's nuclear program, which causes a great problem in Iran, which would lead to refugees seeking refuge throughout the nations of the world, and then would that eventually spur into an Ezekiel 38:39 prophecy fulfillment. So all these are possibilities. But with all of these, we could say to ourselves, we just don't know for sure. All this could happen. None of it could happen. We're looking and we're watching. So I have a question that I would like to present to you, and something that I've been thinking about a little bit lately. Did the Lord put us in a place where we're just clueless about when these things will happen and when the rapture will happen? Did he intentionally make it that it's so obscure, it's so not worth trying to look at, trying to figure out, that just don't go there? And I know that there's well-meaning saints out there that will quickly quote, "No man knows the day or the hour." But even if you look at that verse and you try to apply it to the rapture, which I don't believe in the context of Matthew 24, it's speaking of the rapture. But even if you were to try to apply it to the rapture, even the very words day and hour, which are two measurements of time if you really break it down, still, if you want to get technical, and perhaps the Lord was using an idiom, I'm not sure, but if you want to get technical, if you go beyond day or hour, you still have week, month, and year. Now, I'm not saying that the Lord said this in such a way where he literally means you won't know the day or the hour, but you will know the month or the week or the month or the year. I'm not saying that, but he worded it in such a way where it at least leaves room for that possibility, where if you look at it from a general statement, you may not know the specifics, but you'll know the generalities. And I kind of lean towards that interpretation of that. Again, not even sure if that even is spoken in such a way to mean that it's connected to the rapture. So if the Lord reemphasizes watch, watch, and in Hebrews 10:24 and 25 it says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another. Now listen to this. And all the more as you see the day drawing near. Now, that day that is referred to in this passage, Hebrews 10:24 and 25, I believe is the day of the Lord. It's the tribulation period. And the author of this verse is speaking in such a way where he seems that he is confident that believers will indeed see the day drawing near. So if that's the case, then how do we exactly see the day drawing near? Unless there's some indicators or signs of that. So do we just simply keep our head fixated on the clouds and hope that we get it right on the moment the Lord comes back? I don't think that's the case. I think it's more connected to, do you see what the Lord's showing you, what's going on in the world, what's going on in Israel, the signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, the signs of the birth pangs that are happening around the world, that we could see the day approaching. We may not know the very day, but again, the word day in Scripture sometimes is not referred to a literal day, like the day of the Lord, but rather a period of time. Do we see that period of time drawing nearer? And I believe the answer is yes, that we have the ability to see that. Now, we could be taking something that the Lord never intended for us to take and apply it to the nearness of his return. And so maybe we're graphing or keeping track or trying to rationalize certain events that are going on in the world, such as earthquakes and volcanoes and natural disasters, if they're indeed natural disasters, and saying, yeah, the frequency and the severity of them have increased. And I think that we could probably make good argument of that. Can we graph it and chart it? We could probably attempt to do that. But you might also find somebody that makes an argument against that. Could we possibly be spending too much or putting too much emphasis on feast days and the timing of feast days and how feast days connect to this or that aspect of God's prophetic timeline? Perhaps. But that's why when we look at these things, we can say, perhaps, it might be connected. But I think if there's also that healthy way of thinking of, there's room for us that we could be an error here of how we're connecting things possibly to God's prophetic timeline. And so that's why I think that there is room for humility here. There is room for us to be not speaking in such a way where we're speaking definitively. We're speaking in absolutes. But we humbly say, this could be connected. This may be connected. And this may not be connected. And that's why I think when it comes to watching for his return, for seeing the day draw near, that we have to speak and walk in such a way to be humble about it. Because no matter what sort of wonderful theory that you may come up with, it's simply a theory. We can't say it's definitely going to happen this way. Now, brothers and sisters, I hope that our blessed hope is very, very near. I'm really hoping this is it, but I don't know. And I would encourage you to view this with a level of hope, a level of excitement, but there needs to be some temperance. And there needs to be some room for we could be here a little bit longer, however that may be defined. So this is my thinking out loud with you. I want to draw attention that we are in that season. Like I said before, in summation, just to bring it back around of how we started this. We have the 9th of Av, Pentecost, end of wheat harvest, start of new wine, 7 years from the Revelation 12 sign, 7 years from the Great American Solar Eclipse, things lining up using Hosea 6 verse 2 with 31 AD crucifixion. And Israel is at the cusp of another major war with either Iran, Hezbollah, or both. So we watch, and we know that the Lord's timing's perfect. We don't understand all his ways, but we do keep looking and hoping. So with that, thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you here, there, but especially in the air. God bless.